Trevor trusted her. He told himself every marriage went through rough patches. His own workload had been heavy. Perhaps Diana simply needed more support. He bought her flowers, planned weekend getaways, and tried to rekindle the spark that had first drawn them together. But the distance lingered, an invisible wall growing higher with each passing week. Trevor's instincts, honed from years of reading people and situations, began to whisper warnings. He noticed quiet tears in Diana's eyes when she thought he wasn't watching, the tension in her shoulders when his calls came late at night, the way she flinched when he reached for her hand at dinner. The explanations she gave for late shifts started to sound rehearsed. One Sunday morning, Emma tugged at Trevor's sleeve and said, "Mommy forgot to pack my lunch again. Can you do it, Daddy?" That small confession made Trevor's heart ache. He wanted to believe Diana's devotion was unshaken, but something had changed. Still, loyalty was a principle he lived by, so he kept faith. Maybe love could conquer the quiet cracks. Maybe he was imagining things, seeing shadows where there were none. For now, Trevor watched, waited, and hoped the foundation of his family would hold strong. Trevor stared at her in disbelief. The thought of leaving behind Emma's room, her drawings still taped to the walls, felt like erasing the last remnants of their little girl. Diana, however, was insistent. "We have to heal, Trevor. We can't let this destroy us." But Trevor couldn't let go. He spent hours sitting on Emma's bed, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit, breathing in her lingering scent. At nights, he replayed Diana's reactions in his mind, the strange absence of true sorrow, her eagerness to move forward, the faint smell of unfamiliar cologne on her clothes. One rainy evening, while searching for a photo to frame for Emma's memorial, Trevor found Diana's secondary phone hidden in the back of her closet. The device was passcode protected, but Trevor's skills quickly overcame the barrier. What he found shattered the last fragile pieces of trust he had left. Dozens of texts, late-night calls, and photos exchanged with a man named Christopher. Their conversations spanned months, filled with flirtations and intimate details that made Trevor's hands tremble with fury and heartbreak. It became clear. Diana's distance, her secretive behavior, and her strange comfort with their daughter's death were all entwined with this ongoing betrayal. In that moment, grief twisted into something colder. Determination. If Diana could so easily erase their daughter's memory and move into the arms of another, Trevor would not let her betrayal go unanswered. Trevor dug deeper, uncovering Luke's financial records, which revealed a series of suspicious transactions. Money had been flowing into his account from an offshore entity, payments that coincided with the start of his relationship with Diana. Trevor's instincts screamed that this was more than just a simple affair. It was a plot, a carefully orchestrated plan to eliminate Trevor and claim his wealth. Trevor's next move was to infiltrate Diana's social circle. He attended a charity event at the hospital, where Diana worked, and subtly questioned her colleagues. He learned that Diana had been increasingly distant, often taking long lunches and disappearing for hours at a time. Her behavior had raised eyebrows, but no one had dared to confront her directly. Trevor also discovered that Diana had been seen with Luke on several occasions, always in secretive, clandestine meetings. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, painting a picture of betrayal and deceit that cut deeper than Trevor had ever imagined. Trevor's heart ached, but his resolve hardened. He would not let Diana and Luke get away with their crimes. He would expose their conspiracy and make them pay for their treachery. Trevor's mind raced with plans, each more ruthless than the last. He knew he had to be careful, to cover his tracks and ensure that no one could trace his actions back to him. He would use every resource at his disposal, every skill he had honed over the years, to bring Diana and Luke to justice. Trevor's grief was a burning flame, fueling his determination. He would not rest until he had avenged Emma's death and restored the honor of his family. Trevor's world had been shattered, but from the ashes, he would rise, stronger and more dangerous than ever before. He would make sure that Diana and Luke would never forget the day they crossed Trevor Hayes. When Mrs. Rodriguez shared this with Trevor, her voice trembled with regret. "I wish I'd tried harder to reach you," she said. "Emma was such a bright girl, but something had frightened her deeply. She wouldn't tell us much, only that her mommy's new friend made her feel unsafe." Mrs. Rodriguez promised to send Trevor copies of Emma's last drawings and her notes on their conversations. As Trevor looked over the crayon sketches, his heart twisted in agony. Emma had drawn herself, small on the edge of a playground structure, a shadowy man lurking nearby, a man she labeled Mommy's friend. In another drawing, Emma was falling, wide-eyed, with her mother and a faceless man watching from a distance. The images were as clear as a confession. Emma's fear wasn't just of the dangerous world, it was rooted at home. Trevor's anger crystallized into a singular burning purpose. He couldn't go to the police right away. The official record said it was an accident, and any evidence from his hacking and surveillance could compromise him as much as Diana. He needed undeniable proof, something that would open the authorities' eyes and close the trap around Diana and Luke, once and for all. Trevor sharpened his plan, determined to turn Diana's cold ambition and Luke's manipulations against them. From the ashes of grief, Trevor's resolve gleamed with icy clarity. Emma deserved justice, true and final justice. The audacity infuriated Trevor. He watched as Luke began visiting the Hayes residence during Trevor's supposed therapy sessions, thanks to, what Diana did not know, a maze of hidden cameras Trevor had installed throughout the property. Luke prowled the house with unsettling familiarity, opening drawers, peering inside closets, and even hovering in Emma's untouched room, his expression unreadable. Trevor's patience was absolute. He cataloged every secret meeting, every handshake and whispered promise, every document Diana carelessly stashed in her purse or shredded in the garage. With each passing day, his plan sharpened. He tracked Luke's movements with GPS, monitored Diana's text conversations, and built a meticulous timeline of their affair. Patterns emerged, lunch dates masquerading as therapy appointments, unexplained withdrawals from joint accounts, and cryptic messages like, "Soon, he'll be out of the way." The cold calculation that had made Trevor a legend in his industry now turned to vengeance. He contacted 2 trusted operatives, men bound to him by loyalty, forged on the battlefield of corporate wars. Their orders were explicit, their loyalty unimpeachable. Trevor set the trap in motion, knowing that neither Diana nor Luke suspected a thing. He moved through the days like a ghost, his grief a mask hiding the storm within. Yet in those quiet moments, sitting in Emma's room, tracing her name in crayon on that final drawing, he made an unbreakable promise. There would be justice for his little girl. Diana, oblivious to Trevor's orchestration, tried to reassure him, but her own anxiety was palpable. Trevor listened in on their conversations, savoring the fear in Luke's voice and the desperation in Diana's. He knew that their relationship, built on lies and manipulation, was beginning to fracture under the weight of his silent war. Trevor's next move was to isolate Diana from her support network. He started by subtly poisoning her relationships at the hospital. He planted rumors of Diana's infidelity, using anonymous tips and fabricated evidence. Colleagues who had once admired her began to distance themselves, whispering behind her back. Diana's attempts to deny the allegations fell on deaf ears, as Trevor's manipulations ensured that the rumors gained traction. Her performance at work suffered, and her superiors began to notice her erratic behavior and decreased productivity. Trevor also targeted Diana's friends, using social media to spread false information about her. He created fake profiles, posting incriminating photos and messages that painted Diana as a manipulative and unfaithful partner. Her friends, trusting the evidence before them, began to turn away, leaving Diana increasingly isolated. Trevor's final blow was to Diana's financial stability. He manipulated their joint accounts, making it appear as though Diana was embezzling funds. He created false transactions, forged signatures, and doctored account statements, ensuring that the evidence pointed directly at Diana. When the bank notified Trevor of the suspicious activity, he played the role of the concerned husband, feigning shock and disbelief. Diana's attempts to explain were met with cold suspicion, and Trevor's performance was convincing enough to plant seeds of doubt in her mind. As Diana's world crumbled around her, Trevor watched with cold satisfaction. He knew that the psychological pressure was taking its toll, and soon, both Diana and Luke would be ready for the final phase of his plan. Trevor's revenge was a symphony of destruction, each note played with precision and malice. He reveled in the chaos he had created, knowing that justice for Emma was within his grasp. Luke's arrest for obstruction of justice was the final nail in the coffin of his and Diana's relationship. Diana, already on edge, received the news with a mix of horror and disbelief. She tried to visit Luke in jail, but he refused to see her, his paranoia now fully consuming him. Diana's world was crumbling, and she had no one to turn to. Trevor watched her spiral, his heart cold and unyielding. He had orchestrated every piece of this puzzle, and now he was ready to deliver the final blow. Trevor's next move was to confront Diana directly. He waited until she was home alone, her eyes red from crying, her hands trembling. As she paced the living room, he stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "I know everything, Diana," he said, his voice like ice. Diana froze, her eyes wide with terror. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. Trevor stepped into the room, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know about Luke. I know about your affair. I know about Emma." Diana's face paled, and she took a step back, as if to escape the truth. "Trevor, I can explain," she began, but Trevor cut her off. "There's nothing to explain, Diana. I have all the evidence I need. The police are already investigating Luke. It's only a matter of time before they come for you." Diana's knees buckled, and she sank to the floor, her hands covering her face. "How did you find out?" she sobbed. Trevor's voice was cold and unyielding. "I'm a professional, Diana. I know how to find the truth, and I know how to make people pay for their crimes." Diana looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears and desperation. "Trevor, please," she begged. "I can't go to jail. I can't lose everything." Trevor's expression didn't change. "You should have thought about that before you betrayed me and murdered our daughter." Diana's sobs filled the room, but Trevor felt no pity. He had waited for this moment, and now he would see it through to the end. "The police will be here soon, Diana. You have a choice to make. You can turn yourself in, or you can make this harder on yourself. But either way, you will pay for what you've done." With that, Trevor turned and walked away, leaving Diana to face the consequences of her actions. As he left the room, he knew that justice for Emma was finally within reach. He sent her clips of Luke's conversations with other women, his plans to discard her once Trevor was out of the picture, and his callous remarks about Emma. Diana's world shattered as she realized the depth of Luke's betrayal. She had trusted him, believed his lies, and now she was paying the price. Trevor watched her crumble, his heart cold and unyielding. He had orchestrated every piece of this puzzle, and now he was ready to deliver the final blow. Diana's suspension was just the beginning. Trevor ensured that the hospital's internal investigation would be thorough and damning. He planted evidence of Diana's misconduct, forged documents that showed her embezzling funds, and manipulated patient records to make it appear as though she had been negligent. The hospital's ethics board reviewed the evidence, and Diana's fate was sealed. She was fired, her nursing license revoked, and her professional reputation in ruins. Diana's desperation reached new heights as she tried to clear her name. She begged Trevor for help, claiming she had been framed, but he refused to listen. "You made your choices, Diana," he said, his voice cold. "Now, you have to live with the consequences." Diana's life unraveled rapidly. She lost her friends, her job, and her dignity. She was isolated, hunted, and terrified. Trevor's psychological pressure was relentless, and Diana's mental state deteriorated rapidly. She began seeing things, hearing voices, and experiencing hallucinations. Her guilt and fear consumed her, driving her to the brink of madness. Trevor watched her spiral, his heart cold and unyielding. He had waited for this moment, and now he would see it through to the end. Diana's final breakdown came when Trevor arranged for her to receive a package containing Emma's favorite stuffed rabbit, the one she had been clutching when she died. The package also included a note, written in Trevor's handwriting, that read, "You took everything from me, Diana. Now you will pay." Diana's scream of agony echoed through the empty house as she cradled the stuffed animal, her mind shattered beyond repair. Trevor's revenge was complete. He had destroyed Diana and Luke's lives, ensuring that they would never forget the pain they had caused him and Emma. As he stood over Diana's broken body, he felt a sense of satisfaction. Justice had been served, and Emma's memory would be honored. Trevor's transformation from grieving husband to calculating predator was complete. He had learned the hard way that loyalty demanded loyalty, betrayal demanded retribution, and family was everything. And now, he would never forget. The police began to view Emma's death as a potential homicide, and Diana's involvement became a central focus. Trevor's meticulous planning ensured that every piece of evidence pointed directly at Diana. He had planted false records, manipulated witness statements, and even arranged for an anonymous tip to surface, claiming Diana had been seen arguing with Emma at the park just before her fall. Diana's world was collapsing, and she was desperate to find a way out. She turned to Luke, begging him to help her clear her name, but Luke was too consumed by his own paranoia and desperation. He saw Diana as a liability, someone who could implicate him in Emma's death and his own crimes. Their final confrontation was explosive. Diana, backed into a corner, threatened to expose Luke's blackmail schemes and his role in Emma's death unless he helped her. Luke, panicked and cornered, lashed out, accusing Diana of being weak and foolish. "You're the one who couldn't handle the pressure, Diana," he snarled. "You're the one who let Emma die. You're pathetic." Diana's face contorted with rage and horror. "You're a monster, Luke!" she screamed. "You planned it all. You manipulated me. You're the one who should be in jail." Luke's response was chilling. And who's going to prove it, Diana? You? The grieving mother who let her daughter die? You're as guilty as I am, maybe more so. Diana's scream of agony echoed through the room as she realized the depth of her betrayal and the horror of her actions. Trevor watched the confrontation unfold through hidden cameras, his heart cold and unyielding. He had orchestrated every piece of this puzzle, and now he was ready to deliver the final blow. The police arrived just as Diana and Luke's argument reached its peak. Detective Chun, armed with the new evidence and witness statements, moved in to arrest both conspirators. Diana and Luke were taken into custody, their screams of protest and denial falling on deaf ears. As they were led away, Trevor stood in the shadows, watching with satisfaction. His revenge was complete. He had destroyed Diana and Luke's lives, ensuring that they would never forget the pain they had caused him and Emma. Trevor's transformation from grieving husband to calculating predator was complete. He had learned the hard way that loyalty demanded loyalty, betrayal demanded retribution, and family was everything. And now, he would never forget. Diana's eyes widened in terror as Trevor laid out the cold, hard facts. "You thought you could get away with it, Diana," he said, his voice like ice. "You thought you could murder our daughter and betray me without consequences. But you were wrong." Diana's sobs filled the sterile hospital room, but Trevor felt no pity. He had waited for this moment, and now he would see it through to the end. "The police have all the evidence they need, Diana," he continued. "Luke has already been arrested, and it's only a matter of time before they come for you. But I have a proposal." Diana looked up at him, her eyes filled with desperation. "What do you want, Trevor?" she whispered. Trevor's expression didn't change. "I want you to confess, Diana. I want you to admit to everything, your affair, your conspiracy with Luke, and your role in Emma's death. I want you to face the consequences of your actions and pay for what you've done." Diana's face paled, and she shook her head in denial. "I can't, Trevor. I can't go to jail. I can't lose everything." Trevor's voice was cold and unyielding. "You should have thought about that before you betrayed me and murdered our daughter. You have a choice, Diana. You can confess and face justice, or you can make this harder on yourself. But either way, you will pay for what you've done." With that, Trevor turned and walked away, leaving Diana to face the consequences of her actions. As he left the room, he knew that justice for Emma was finally within reach. Trevor's revenge was complete. He had destroyed Diana and Luke's lives, ensuring that they would never forget the pain they had caused him and Emma. Trevor's transformation from grieving husband to calculating predator was complete. He had learned the hard way that loyalty demanded loyalty, betrayal demanded retribution, and family was everything. And now, he would never forget. He would ensure that Diana and Luke would face the full weight of the law, and that Emma's memory would be honored. As Trevor walked out of the hospital, he felt a sense of satisfaction. Justice had been served, and Emma's spirit could finally rest in peace. She wrote help in crayon, begging for someone to save her from you. She knew you were going to hurt her, and she was terrified. She died knowing her own mother didn't love her. Diana's scream of agony filled the room as the full horror of her actions crashed down on her. Luke, his face pale with shock, looked from Trevor to Diana, his eyes wide with terror. "You're both monsters," Trevor said, his voice cold and unyielding. "You planned to murder an innocent child and frame me for it. You thought you could get away with it, but you were wrong. Now, you'll both face the consequences of your actions." Trevor turned to leave, but paused at the door. "The police will be here soon," he said over his shoulder. I suggest you both start praying for mercy, because you're going to need it." As he walked away, Trevor felt a sense of satisfaction. His revenge was complete. He had destroyed Diana and Luke's lives, ensuring that they would never forget the pain they had caused him and Emma. Trevor's transformation from grieving husband to calculating predator was complete. He had learned the hard way that loyalty demanded loyalty, betrayal demanded retribution, and family was everything. And now, he would never forget. He would ensure that Diana and Luke would face the full weight of the law, and that Emma's memory would be honored. As Trevor left the hospital, he knew that justice had been served, and Emma's spirit could finally rest in peace. The police arrived shortly after Trevor's departure, armed with the recorded confessions and the evidence he had meticulously gathered. Diana and Luke were arrested and charged with premeditated murder, conspiracy, and a host of other crimes. Their trial was swift and brutal, with the recorded conversations and Trevor's evidence painting a clear picture of their guilt. The public was outraged, and the media coverage was relentless. Diana and Luke were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, their names forever synonymous with evil. Trevor watched the sentencing from the back of the courtroom, his heart heavy but satisfied. He had avenged Emma's death and ensured that justice was served. As he left the courthouse, he knew that his life would never be the same. But he also knew that he had done what was necessary to honor Emma's memory and protect his family. Trevor's journey had been one of grief, betrayal, and ultimately, redemption. He had faced the darkest parts of himself and emerged stronger, more determined to protect what was truly important. And as he walked away from the courthouse, he carried with him the knowledge that he had avenged his daughter and ensured that her memory would live on. But he knew that Diana and Luke would pay the ultimate price for their crimes. As the judge sentenced them to death, Trevor stood tall, his expression unyielding. He had avenged his daughter, and he would ensure that her memory lived on. The years that followed were difficult. Trevor sold the house in Scottsdale, unable to bear the memories it held. He moved to a small apartment in downtown Phoenix, surrounded by the constant hum of the city. He threw himself into his work, using the security firm as a distraction from his grief. But even as he built his empire, he never forgot Emma. Her memory was a constant presence, a reminder of the love that had been stolen from him. Trevor visited her grave every week, talking to her as if she were still there, listening to his words. He told her about his day, his struggles, his triumphs. He shared his pain and his anger, his love and his longing, and he promised her that he would never forget, that he would always fight for justice, and that he would always love her. As the years passed, Trevor's life took on a new purpose. He became a champion for child safety and advocacy, using his resources and influence to protect other families from the horror he had endured. He founded a charity in Emma's name, providing support and resources to families affected by violence and abuse. He lobbied for stricter laws and penalties for those who harmed children, ensuring that the justice system would never again be so lenient with such heinous crimes. Trevor's work brought him a sense of peace, a way to honor Emma's memory and make a difference in the world. He knew that he could never bring her back, but he could ensure that her death had meaning, that it had made the world a better place. And in that knowledge, he found a measure of solace. Trevor's journey had been one of grief, betrayal, and ultimately, redemption. He had faced the darkest parts of himself and emerged stronger, more determined to protect what was truly important. And as he stood by Emma's grave, looking out over the city, He knew that he had avenged his daughter and ensured that her memory would live on. He had become a beacon of hope and justice, a testament to the power of love and the unbreakable bond between a father and his child. And he would continue to fight, to protect, and to honor Emma's memory for as long as he lived. The apartment was sterile, devoid of personal touches, designed for functionality rather than comfort. Trevor's life had become a series of strategic moves, each one calculated to eliminate threats and maximize control. He had become a master of manipulation, using his knowledge of psychology and human behavior to bend others to his will. Trevor's transformation had not gone unnoticed by those around him. His employees whispered about his cold demeanor and ruthless efficiency. Clients both feared and admired his unyielding pursuit of their interests, but Trevor cared little for their opinions. He had a new purpose, a new mission, to protect the innocent and punish the guilty with unyielding justice. Trevor's days were filled with meetings, strategic planning, and the meticulous execution of his clients' wishes. His nights were spent poring over case files, analyzing data, and honing his skills. Sleep was a luxury he could ill afford, a weakness he couldn't allow. His body was a machine, fueled by caffeine and adrenaline, driven by a single-minded focus on his goals. Trevor's world had become a chessboard, and he was the grandmaster, moving pieces with precision and calculation. But even as he built his empire and exacted his revenge, Trevor couldn't escape the memories of Emma. Her laughter echoed in his mind, her smile haunted his dreams. He carried her picture in his wallet, a constant reminder of the love that had been stolen from him, and he vowed that he would never forget, that he would always fight for justice, and that he would always protect the innocent. Trevor's journey had been one of grief, betrayal, and ultimately, transformation. He had faced the darkest parts of himself and emerged stronger, more determined to protect what was truly important. And as he stood in his fortress of a penthouse, looking out over the city, he knew that he had avenged his daughter and ensured that her memory would live on. He had become a beacon of justice, a testament to the power of love and the unbreakable bond between a father and his child, and he would continue to fight, to protect, and to honor Emma's memory for as long as he lived. Trevor's story was one of redemption and vengeance, of love and loss, and of the unyielding pursuit of justice. And it was far from over. The city of Phoenix had a new guardian, a protector who would stop at nothing to ensure that the innocent were safe and the guilty were punished. And Trevor Hayes was just getting started. Mrs. Rodriguez looked older, the events of the past year weighing heavily on her gentle features. She greeted Trevor with a quiet nod, her hands trembling slightly as she sipped her coffee. "Thank you for meeting me," she said softly. "I almost didn't reach out, but there's something I need to share with you." Trevor's posture was rigid, his eyes never leaving the teacher's face. "What is it, Mrs. Rodriguez?" She took a steadying breath. "The other teachers and I have talked about Emma so much, Trevor. We all still feel the loss, every day. But I remember something Emma said a few weeks before it all happened." Mrs. Rodriguez paused, gathering her courage. "Emma told me that she loved her daddy very much. She said, 'My daddy is my hero. He always comes back for me.' Even when she was afraid, Trevor, she found comfort in knowing you were out there, protecting her. I thought, perhaps you should know that." The words cut through Trevor's hardened exterior, like nothing had since Emma's death. Amid all the darkness and tragedy, the knowledge that his daughter believed in him until the very end brought both pain and a faint glimmer of peace For a long moment, the two sat in silence, the memories of Emma's sweet spirit dancing between them. Mrs. Rodriguez reached across the table, her hand resting gently atop Trevor's. Whatever you've become, whatever you've done, I believe Emma would want you to remember the parts of yourself that were good. She believed in you, Trevor. Don't lose that, not for her sake. Something in Trevor's heart, long since frozen, stirred. For the first time in a year, he allowed himself a moment of vulnerability. "Thank you, Mrs. Rodriguez," he said quietly. "That means more than you know." And in that fragile moment, a small seed of hope took root, whispering that perhaps redemption was still possible, even for a man who had delivered such absolute justice. Trevor's grief was a physical force, crushing his chest and blurring his vision. He clutched Emma's drawing, his fingers tracing the words she had written with such hope and love. "Daddy and Emma forever." The words echoed in his mind, a haunting reminder of the innocence he had lost and the love he had failed to protect. "I have to go," Trevor managed to say, his voice choked with emotion. Mrs. Rodriguez nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Trevor. I should have told you sooner, but I didn't know how. I hope this brings you some peace." Trevor stood, the drawing clutched tightly in his hand. "Thank you, Mrs. Rodriguez. Thank you for everything." As he walked out of the cafe, the world around him seemed to shift. The cold, calculated man who had sought vengeance with unyielding determination was gone, replaced by a father who had lost his daughter and the innocence of his own heart. Trevor's journey had been one of grief, betrayal, and transformation. He had faced the darkest parts of himself and emerged stronger, more determined to protect what was truly important. But in that moment, he realized that he had lost something precious in his quest for justice. He had become a man who would have frightened his own daughter, a man who had let vengeance consume him. As he drove away from the cafe, Trevor made a silent vow. He would honor Emma's memory, not just by seeking justice, but by becoming the man she had believed him to be. The goodest person, the one who would always protect her and make things right. Trevor's path forward was unclear, but he knew that he had to find a way to reconcile the man he had become with the father his daughter had loved. He had to find a way to heal, to forgive, and to honor Emma's sacrifice. And as he drove through the city, the drawing of his daughter's final words clutched in his hand, he knew that he had a long journey ahead. But he was ready to face it, ready to become the man his daughter had believed him to be, ready to find redemption and honor Emma's memory. Trevor stood at Emma's grave, the sun setting behind him and casting long shadows across the headstone that bore her gentle inscription. She believed in heroes. As the wind stirred the fresh flowers he placed each week, Trevor understood that his life would always be marked by loss and regret, but also by the unyielding promise to honor his daughter's trust. No longer able to love freely or trust easily, Trevor nonetheless found a kind of purpose, a way to protect the innocent, to bring justice where it was needed most. Through the Emma Hayes Foundation, he made it his mission to fight for children who had no one else, channeling his pain into a relentless defense against those who would do harm. Emma's memory lit a path forward, one grounded not in vengeance, but in the fierce, determined hope that good people could still make a difference. Perhaps Trevor could never again be the hero his daughter had seen in him, but every case he took, every child he helped, was a small step toward honoring the belief that had illuminated Emma's final days. And so, with each visit to her grave, Trevor whispered the words he could never say enough. I love you, Emma. I promise, for as long as I live, I will protect them. Because you always believed I could. No output, as all non-story content and requests for comments or subscriptions must be removed per instructions.